From the Oklahoma newsroom, this is an OU update. I'm Jenny Carlson. Lincoln Riley's name has surfaced now a couple times in head coaching searches, but maybe the biggest and clearly the best option that's out there for him is South Carolina. It sounds like the Gamecocks are interested in talking to the Oklahoma offensive coordinator, and Jason Kersey joins us on the phone to talk about this. Jason, obviously South Carolina is replacing a legend in Steve Spurrier, and Spurrier replaced a legend in Lou Holtz. Why does Lincoln Riley make sense potentially for the Gamecocks?
Well, I think that he's an exciting hire. He was an exciting hire to be Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. He injected life into an offense that was very stagnant and sort of needed a boost. Really, a program that needed a boost after last season. And I think that, maybe there's some thought that a young, energetic, very intelligent and football savvy coach and recruiter like Lincoln Riley could do the same for South Carolina. The Gamecocks, after Steve Spurrier's retirement, have kind of had a rough season, and I think there's a lot of questions about that program moving forward. And the thing is, the offense that Lincoln Riley brings with him is one that can turn things around pretty quickly. We saw that at Oklahoma. We've seen it at Texas Tech with Mike Leach. We've seen it all over the place. So in the SEC East, which seems ripe for the taking, you could potentially see a quick turnaround. I think the problems or the potential hangups about him are that he's so young. He's only been at this level with this much responsibility for 1 year, and he would be the youngest coach in FBS. And this is a program too that its two most recent head coaching hires were Hall of Famers before they even got to South Carolina, Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier. So it would be a big shift for that program.
Jason, I'm wondering from South Carolina's vantage point, you talk about it would be a big change, a shift in a lot of ways for them. But the fact that Lincoln Riley was at East Carolina in that neck of the woods, he obviously wasn't recruiting against a lot of SEC teams like he would be at South Carolina. But does that play into this at all, that he's, maybe not a known commodity in the way that Steve Spurrier was before he went to SEC, but he knows that area and could recruit that area? Yeah,
I mean, he certainly, I'm sure he has relationships with the high school coaches there. I mean, he even recruited OU's quarterback commit for this upcoming class is from North Carolina, Austin Kendall. So, I mean, he definitely has connections in that part of the country. But I really think that it's more the excitement or maybe the potential for wanting to talk to him is more related to the job he's done, at Oklahoma, and the sort of style that he would bring and energy that he would bring to a program that desperately needs it.
What about Lincoln Riley's standpoint on all this, Jason? It was one thing when North Texas was a team interested in Lincoln Riley, a lower level Division I program, obviously. A little different when South Carolina, an SEC team that has, all the backing that it does, a huge stadium, a huge following, all of those things. If Lincoln Riley gets this opportunity, isn't he going to take it? Isn't this a for sure thing?
You would think so. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to think that it would. If they were to offer him the job, you have an opportunity to go be a head coach at a place like that. Like I said, I think you can probably win there pretty quickly if you work things right. They're in the SEC East. I mean, Florida won the SEC East, and they're not very good this year, but they've still managed to win 10 games and win the SEC East. So, the potential for winning quickly there is good. The lowest paid SEC coach, at least according to USA Today's database, doesn't make less than $3 million a year. That's a substantial raise from the $500,000 a year he's making now at Oklahoma. So, I mean, those are the things that would be good. The things that would be bad is the potential that things don't go well, and after you're let go maybe after 2 or 3 years if things don't get turned around quickly, and then at that point you've maybe set yourself back career-wise for a few years when you might have had other opportunities down the road had you stayed at Oklahoma. And I think one thing that people have asked or said about Lincoln Riley that's a very good point and potentially something that might keep him in Norman are two things. One, he's definitely going to get a giant raise this offseason if he stays. And the second thing is, Bob Stoops isn't going to coach forever. And he said many times that he doesn't want to coach into old age the way that Bill Snyder, Steve Spurrier, Bobby Bowden, Joe Paterno did. So, it's not inconceivable to think that Bob Stoops would retire in 2 or 3 years. And at that point, Lincoln Riley would sure seem like a good candidate to take over.
Yeah, and we definitely have a program more ready to run what he wants to run. Jason, lastly, we've got to talk about potential ramifications. Obviously, there's no job offer out there. We don't even know if any interview has taken place between South Carolina and Lincoln Riley, but these Sooners are headed towards the playoff. They're going to have a huge game to get prepared for. We've seen coaches get hired away as a team gets ready to play for a championship, and we've seen it go well, we've seen it go poorly. What's the best guess on how Oklahoma would handle it? There's no way to know how it's going to work ultimately, wins and losses, but how do you see Oklahoma potentially handling this?
Well, these things can go really well or they can go really bad. We've seen that multiple examples. Tom Herman took the Houston job on December 15th last year, juggled both jobs, stayed at Ohio State, and they obviously went on and won the national title, so it worked really well there. Mark Richt was, when he took the Georgia job, he was Florida State's offensive coordinator, and they scored 2 points against OU when he stuck around and tried to juggle both jobs. So it can really go either way. The thing about OU is that every offensive coordinator that Bob has had that has taken a head coaching job has left before the bowl game and not been part of the planning. Going back, Mike Leach, when he left, when Mark Mangino left, when Chuck Long left, and when Kevin Wilson left, they all just sort of cut ties right then in December and went to their new job and got started. There's so much to do when you accept a head coaching job. You have to hire staff. You have to kind of get going recruiting in a very narrow window, 2 months you have to get recruiting done. So there's a lot to do. But with a national championship on the line, it might be different. None of those 4 OU offensive coordinators left with a national championship on the line. So I would have to think that Lincoln Riley would stay through the playoffs, just because I think the precedent, around college football is if there's a championship on the line, you stick around. Yeah. And if there's not, then you can sort of move on and go ahead and get started at your new job.
Yeah, definitely something we'll have to keep a tune of, and we know that will be a big storyline should Lincoln Riley get hired. Obviously, Jason will be following that news story, see where it goes, see if an interview happens, see if an offer is extended. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoma.